So, welcome back to the Web3 Insights podcast, a show where we explore ideas, technologies, and builders shaping the future of Web3, AI, and decentralized infrastructure. Joining me today is Simon Schmitz, who is the VP of Synapse Power AI. Simon and his team are building at the intersection of artificial intelligence, energy intelligence, and Web3 infrastructure. They're rethinking how compute resources are powered, optimized, and owned. In this conversation, we're going to unpack Simon's journey into working with Synapse Power AI, why energy efficiency and access to GPUs are, becoming a critical bottleneck, let's say, and how community-owned compute models like Synapse Console are operating the door for more people to actively participate in the AI economy. If you're a builder, investor, or simply curious about what AI, energy, and Web3 and how they collide together, this is going to be a really good episode for you. So let's get straight into it. Simon, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Aaron.
To kick things off, Simon, can you just introduce yourself and walk us through, your journey into becoming the vice president of Synapse Power AI?
Sure. So I've come to Synapse Power via somewhat circuitous route. So my background is actually law. And for many years, I practiced as, a legal advisor advising power and energy companies and utilities, developing their power resources, both in the UK and globally. And that's, pretty much a zero-sum game. So, it's very much about, creating as much electricity capacity as you can and then just selling it. But ultimately, the customer to whom you're accountable doesn't really have a vision or a view of what the power capacity that you're creating is. What are the kind of unit economics of it, and also when the lights go off, you're pretty much powerless in terms of what you can do about it. You just have to wait for them to go back on. So looking around at that, I thought that this is essentially an infrastructure play. A lot of people are grappling with artificial intelligence, trying to understand what it is, what it means, and they're having a lot of fun. There's a lot of creativity around using ChatGPT and other LLMs to first of all understand the capabilities of the technology, but then also to do funky things, to create images, to chat, to do search and all of this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, no one knows for sure what direction this technology is going to go in. But it does seem like it's here with us to stay. And if you are in the Web3 DeFi space, then you're going to become increasingly concerned about ensuring that the power, the underlying power, and this is a very kind of power intensive technology, that it will always be there. And one can't always rely on it in the same way with the old utilities. You pay your electricity bill, but occasionally the lights go off. We can't afford to have, GPU compute go off. It needs to be there all the time. So Synapse Power is really at the intersection of all of that creativity that, these brilliant futurists and technologists are building on the blockchain and using AI, but also to enable them to have an eye on what is powering this, and if there is anything on the horizon that could perhaps do violence to that and affect their ability to do their work properly. So that's how we came up with this concept, and we can talk more about this.
Yeah, no, for sure. Sounds great. Why are the energy efficiency and access to compute becoming such a critical bottleneck, for AI and Web3 right now in particular?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, essentially, this is, with all of the language modeling and the learning that's going on at the moment, there simply isn't enough compute.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got the hyperscalers, all of the household names, the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, who are basically absorbing all of the GPU compute that is coming online. So all of these massive data centers are being built. All of that is being, completely absorbed. And, this is going to present challenges. First of all, because, you're pretty much at their mercy when it comes to accessing compute. and what happens if something goes wrong. So the whole idea behind this is that bearing in mind that everyone it's going to become almost like a human rights, like access to the internet, access to GPU compute. We're enabling that by focusing on the infrastructure and allowing the communities that develop around this to participate in it as well.
How does AI fundamentally, change the way power, infrastructure, and compute resources are optimized compared to, traditional systems, let's say?
Well, I mean, as I said at the opening, when you look at the way that electricity has been provided historically and other utilities, you're pretty much at the mercy of the utility. You rely
Hmm.
on them, you pay your fee each month, and they provide it. So I mean, if you imagine still with electricity provision, a lot of
Hmm.
people have meters that sit on the kitchen top counter, showing them what their usage is, but it's not necessarily showing them where that usage is, and perhaps that they could optimize it. So you have people trying to kind of not use the kettle at certain times of the day, but it's not a very exact science. With AI, obviously, you have much more of an ability to monitor where the usage is, and when you understand what the bottlenecks are, when you've looked at that data and you've seen and the AI has reacted to it, it can give you a much more intuitive and often much more prescriptive view of where the bottlenecks are going to occur so that they can be avoided. So it's a much smarter system of metering
Hmm.
electricity supply and GPU supply.
Yeah, that sounds great. One of the core products that you're building is Synapse Console. Can you explain what it is and why you felt the market needed a community-driven GPU platform?
So the Synapse Power goal in the long run is to build some of this infrastructure, as
Hmm.
well as providing what we do now, which is access to it.
Yeah.
So we want to get into the data center business, but it's not so that we can be all of our compute can be completely absorbed by one of the hyperscalers. The console allows people parts of the Synapse community to access GPU compute. Okay, and not everyone's going to need to do that, but what it gives them is a view of what is available, when it can be used, and how it can be used optimally. And I think for a lot of developers going forward, looking to develop products on the blockchain using AI, understanding that compute availability is going to make it much easier for them to avoid the inevitable bottlenecks and disruption to their work. So the console is a real-time view of what compute is available from our network. Okay. And if you want to access it, then you can through our community infrastructure.
Hmm.
So it's basically a shop window into what compute is available. And as we evolve, that window will evolve as well. So we will have hopefully a much larger inventory of GPU compute that we can provide to our community.
Yeah, sure. So the sign up console, it allows obviously users to contribute to GPU power. I also believe as well, earn rewards. Why do you believe shared, community owned compute is such an important model, especially in the middle of the AI boom?
Uh, well, I would take issue as to whether we're in the middle of the AI boom. I suspect we're probably
Yeah.
just at the beginning of it, and whether it turns out to be a boom or not, who knows? But I think like all of these initiatives, these decentralized initiatives and community building, it's about trust, Aaron.
Mm.
And I think that recognizing that there is enormous potential within this technology to allow our community to access it in the most kind of user-friendly and sustainable way is a hugely important kind of founding principle for us. And I think that, with communities, they also, they it takes a village, doesn't it? So they can all help each other. And hopefully, the good, the products, services, the net benefits that accrue from all of this will accrue to the community as a whole, and there'll be that kind of cross fertilization rather than people thinking, oh, we all exist in silos and we have to kind of aggressively compete and outbid each other for access to compute. I think we're providing, the nuts and bolts of what the community will need in order to grow and prosper.
Yeah. So looking at the incentives within that, how do you think about incentives within Synapse Console, to ensure that it remains sustainable, fair, and attractive for both contributors and users of the compute as well?
Well, I think sustainability and fairness are key ingredients of this. And the reward structure does a number of things. We have obviously the XNAP token. So, those people who put money into this will get a token, but it will be a utility token. It's backed by a real business, and the number of tokens that they have will aggregate over time as a reward for their for their support of this. And then also that that token will be freely tradable, and there are various programs around lock-ins and rewards attached to that. We won't get into the detail of that now, but I think with that there, people feel like they become stakeholders in the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And I think as a kind of community, it becomes much easier for people to communicate with each other around the good that they're doing. And not everyone is a developer, but those who want to invest and acquire the token can feel like they have, a participation interest in this. And they will want to see that those who are using the compute, which is being funded by the token, are producing, goods and services that are, have real value in the real world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As demand for AI workloads, continues to grow, how does Synapse Power AI ensure platforms like the console, can scale without compromising reliability or performance?
Well, I mean, we're all about robustness and scalability, and to go back to that kind of founding precept of this is infrastructure, okay, and infrastructure needs to be reliable. It is, we these computers are running all day, every day. There's a lot of duress on them. We need to make sure that we have diversity within our GPU inventory. So as I said, we want to move rapidly into development of our own infrastructure, our own data centers, which are fully dedicated to the Synapse community.
Hmm.
At the moment, we provide, effectively co-location services. So we are, um, we can provide GPU through existing data center infrastructure, but we want to move into a position where we control that infrastructure as well, and we make it exclusively available for the Synapse community. So, through increasing our infrastructure and our supply, we will ensure robustness. But I mean, there's, it's a whole science in and of itself, data
Mm.
center procurement, ensuring that those are sustainable and that they are on 24/7. So we look at this very much in terms of, infrastructure, building blocks, robustness, and we have that very much in the back of our minds. We don't want this thing to collapse at any point in time. So we take a very, very kind of, long-term view of this. We want to build long-term sustainable GPU infrastructure for our community.
Amazing. What I'm keen to understand what's been the biggest challenge so far in educating users and enterprises about decentralized or community shared GPU infrastructure?
I think, there are perennial challenges around the idea of community-based development. But I mean, it's very much, the open source discussion. I think we're in at the ground floor, and I don't know. I know I have to look in my crystal ball, but I don't know exactly how this will all spin out. But I think there's a lot of questions around AI and the use cases.
Hmm.
We read all of the scare stories about, how it's impacting business and job losses and all the rest of it. But I don't think we really have a kind of very clear vision of how AI will be used by businesses. But I think this is the opportunity to get in there and introduce that decentralized, community-based approach as an option. It's not for everyone. I understand that. If you're going to replace Microsoft with agentic AI, that's a big decision that a chief investment officer or a head of IT in a big corporate needs to make. But I think at the grassroots level, and if one believes that these are tools that will enable ordinary people to build sustainable businesses themselves, I think there's a lot of growth to be achieved from acting as a community, those people talking to each other, supporting each other,
Hmm.
and hopefully building a model which actually produces really great tools which the larger businesses will use. So it's very much a rank and file thing at the moment. For the small guy, it benefits them, it brings down the cost of compute, it gives them a stakeholder interest in it. But I think we're going to see some really exciting tools developed through the Synapse platform.
Yeah, and awesome. Looking ahead, how do you see community-powered compute and intelligent energy systems shaping the future of AI and Web3 infrastructure in general?
Yeah, I think we need much smarter systems. We need, I think, a lot of great data will be produced
Hmm.
by AI. The challenge always with data, um, and I've heard it erroneously referred to as the new oil. But I mean, people don't necessarily know how to use their data. I mean, all businesses, all people produce great data. But the
Mm.
point is, it's only as good as your ability to interpret it. And I think AI gives us a kind of seismic shift in terms of the interpretation of data. Up until recently, you had to employ data analysts and all kinds of people to look at that data and then rely on their findings. But I think with AI, we can allow people to take their own data sets, look at those, interpret them, and really maximize the value that can be gained out of it. So I think that's going to be one of the major benefits from this is that data and data interpretation no longer remains a niche science. I think if
Yeah,
we unleash AI on data, then our communities, where there's DeFi, Web3 will be able to have immediate use of their data in a way that benefits their organizations.
yeah, sure. Is there anything particularly exciting for you guys coming up this year on the roadmap? Any sort of milestones ahead to look out for?
Yeah, I think obviously to grow the community, I know that there's a lot of work on tools being developed by Synapse itself. Those will soon be available as apps integrated into the console. And as I said also, Aaron, I think moving into physical data center development is a huge leap forward for us. So, I mean, obviously
Yeah.
that's a game changer, but I think we'll see a lot of interesting progress on that over the course of the next 12 months.
Amazing. Finally, for founders and builders listening in, what should they be thinking about today if they want to, build products that align with the future of AI, energy, and decentralized infrastructure? Any advice?
Yeah, I think, I mean, for those of us who've been around for a while, if you go back to the original dot-com boom, a lot of that was based upon, large physical servers. One of the biggest expenses, or one of the biggest investments that tech entrepreneurs had to make was in their own servers, their own infrastructure. And then obviously cloud came along and removed the requirement for that and essentially democratized the internet. But we've now kind of, pendulum has swung back. And if we look at the infrastructure, I think we do need to be informed by what happened in the past and understand that this can only be successful if there is 24/7 availability of compute and that it's delivered in a sustainable way. So we would always encourage, founders to look, through tools like the Synapse console at where their compute is going to come from. We're not, we are the kind of alternative to having to go to one of the large hyperscalers and rent compute from them in very conventional terms. We can, provide a very creative way of finding where the best GPU compute is available, providing that ourselves where applicable, and not making it a pain point, but also making infrastructure which we relied upon for 20 years to be there. I don't think that reliance can necessarily be counted upon, particularly not now. So we provide, an insight into that, and we just encourage founders always to have one eye on where that's coming from.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing stuff. Well, that wraps up today's episode quite nicely. Massive thank you, Simon, for you coming on and sharing your insights on community-driven compute, intelligent energy systems, and the future of AI and Web3 infrastructure. If this conversation sparked new ideas for you, whether you're thinking about decentralized GPU, sustainable AI, or how to build infrastructure that actually scales, make sure to share this episode with someone who should be paying attention to it, where the industry is headed. You can follow Synapse Power AI, keep up with their work, and if you enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Web3 Insights, where we have conversations with builders shaping the next wave of the internet. Simon, thank you once again, and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Aaron.